Welcome to Python Programming for Beginners, and in this video we are going to talk about data types in Python. Okay, so data types are the different types of data that we can store in a variable. So if you take Python programming, we recognize different kind of values, just as we have numbers, we have alphabets, and a lot more like complex numbers just in our natural life. So does the computer understands these kind of things, and it has its own compartments. So the first type that we'll be looking at is what we call strings. Strings. So when we say strings, if I'm bringing it to our normal life or a layman's understanding, we will say that strings are words or alphabets, right? So in our world, we call it words or we say these are alphabets, but the computer call it strings. So note that. And how do we write strings in Python or in programming? Okay, so before we can write strings, the first thing we have to know is the syntax, how it is constructed. That is what I mean. So the number one rule is that strings are enclosed in either a single or double quotes. That means that if I want to write dog, all that I have to do is bring my double quotes and I write the dog inside. So when the computer sees this, he knows this is words or strings. Good. I can also write God. Okay, I can write Python for beginners. Good. Okay, so let me comment them real quick. Okay, so the next type we are going to look at is and before we move to the next type, I want us to do something which is called checking the data type of a certain value. So let's say we type this one here, we want to know what kind of thing is it. Let us prove whether it is strings or not. Well, Python can prove that. All that you have to do is to use something we call the type function. Okay, don't be confused. It is just something normal, and as at this point, I don't even expect you to know this, so don't be confused. The type function, and this is the syntax of the type function. So if you want to check the data type of a certain figure or value, all that you have to do is to do type, and let's say let me write something like dog right here, and let me run it. Okay, let me add print so it can display it to us. And for some of us who have not yet watched the print video, just go and know how print works. And if you have not also watched the variable video, just go and watch it so we can all go together. Okay, so if I say print type, this type function that I'm using here is trying to say that it's asking the computer what data type is this thing I've written in here. You get it? Okay, so let's see. So the computer says the class is str, which is strings. So keep this type in mind. Anytime you want to check what a value is, then make sure you use this one to verify. Okay, let's comment it and move forward. Okay, so the next one we are going to look at is integer. And we all are familiar with integers. They are just numbers. Integers are just numbers, and they do not require any codes. Okay, so just as we write numbers, that's how we write the integers. So they are very simple. We don't need any codes around them. Okay, so for example, as we all know, we know 5, we know 6, we know 8, we know 9. Okay, well, let's see. Let's try and find out the type. So we say print, we bring into bracket, which we have already thought about print. Then inside the bracket, we write the type. Then we know the syntax of the type already, which I said it is type into bracket. Then what do we want to check? We want to check number 5. What is the data type of 5? Let us run it and see. You see, it says that the class is an integer, right? Good. So keep this in mind. Good. And mind you, they don't come under any quotation marks. Good. Okay. The next thing we are going to look at is called floats. Floats. And when we talk about floats, floats are decimals. So instead of the computer to say decimals, it understands it as floats. So when we talk about floats, we are just talking about decimals. And they are also numbers, so they are also not surrounded by anything. Anything. Okay. You just need to write it just like that. Okay, for example, we can write 67.6, or we can say 67.4, we can say 2.5, right? We know all these are decimals, which the computer calls its float. So let's try and prove it whether it is float or not. Let me clear history so we don't get confused. So print into bracket type into bracket 34.5. You see the class is float. You get it? Good. So okay, let's comment it and move forward. The last thing we probably might look at is what we call Boolean. It may sound new for some of us, and Boolean are just true or false. Of false. So in programming, these are also data types. You get it? Yeah, so make sure you get that. So let's say we have true, we have false. Let's see what kind of data types they are. Let's just prove it. Maybe I'm wrong. Okay, so we say print, we do into bracket, then we say type, then we into bracket, uh we say true. Okay, and okay, mind you, boolean, they do not come under any quotation marks. Okay, yeah, so let's try to run this and see. Oh wow, it says class bool, so this is a boolean, and we use them for statements. Maybe you are constructing a statement that you have to use false first, or you are trying to say if somebody's name is this and if the password is this, let's allow the person. So you say that return true. That is how it works. So we've looked at four things, which is the first one is strings, the second one is integers, the third one is floats, and the last one is booleans. But there is the last thing I want to add, and the last thing I want to add is what we call typecasting. When we talk about typecasting, let me write it right here. When we talk about typecasting, we are trying to say that we want to convert a float maybe to an integer, or a string, which is words, to just a normal number like 5. Or let's say we want to change true to maybe float. That is what we call typecasting. So if you want to do typecasting, what you have to do is to, let's say you have a string, which is um okay, let's see, we have um let me take integers and floats because they are good and they are not that confusing. So if we have 67.8 and we want to change it from decimal to just an integer, that means we have to forfeit something. How do we go? So all that we say is that integer into bracket 67.8. Good, because we know that this is a decimal, and a decimal is what? Is a float. So let's see what will happen. Let's run it and see. Okay, let's print it so that we can display it for us to know the consequences of our code. Okay, you see, it just printed 67. Why? Because we have cut this one away. We are trying to convert this float into just an integer. That's wonderful. Let's see if we have, we want to convert a number to, which is like 89, into a float. Know that this is an integer, which is just a number. A float is a decimal number, so we want to convert 89 to a float, which is a decimal number. So, okay, let's print it so that we can see the consequences of our code. Let me just cut this one out. Okay, let's run it and see. Oh, wonderful. 89.0. So this is about typecasting. And do to help yourself is to watch the video again and keep on practicing. Just keep on practicing.